My name is Ethan Walker, and until 3 weeks ago, my biggest worry was whether I had attached the right files to an email. Now, I'm standing barefoot on a stretch of white sand that doesn't exist on any map I recognize, staring at the wreckage of a private aircraft half buried near the shoreline, and beside me stands Claire Montgomery, my boss. Back in Chicago, Claire Montgomery was untouchable. At 42, she was the founder and CEO of Montgomery Strategic Group, a woman whose presence could silence a boardroom with nothing more than a raised eyebrow. People described her as brilliant, ruthless, controlled. I described her as impossible to read. I was her executive assistant, organized years old, organized, invisible. Our conversations were efficient, professional, emotionless, until the night. Everything fell apart. We were flying to San Diego for a last-minute acquisition meeting. The jet was smooth, quiet, expensive enough to make me sit straighter than usual. Claire barely looked up from her laptop, then the turbulence started at first. It felt like mild bumps, the kind pilots casually dismiss. Within minutes, the cabin began to shake violently. Overhead compartments rattled. The hum of the engines changed lower, strained when the pilot's voice came through the speakers. It wasn't calm. It was controlled panic. We're experiencing a system failure. Brace for impact. That was when Claire looked at me, not as a boss, as a human being. Her hand reached out instinctively, gripping my arm as the plane descended far too fast. The scream of metal, the sickening drop, then darkness. When I woke up, the air smelled like salt and smoke. The plane had crashed near the waterline, torn apart, but somehow not on fire. I was alive somehow. So was Claire. She was sitting nearby, her blazer torn, her hair loose. Shock written across her face in a way I had never seen before. "We're alive," I said, mostly to convince myself. She nodded slowly. "Where are we? An island? No buildings? No boats? No signal, just ocean." That was the moment control left her. And for the first time, she didn't know what to do next. The first day was chaos, shock, adrenaline. By the second day, reality settled in. No rescue, no contact, limited supplies. Claire tried to take charge, giving instructions, planning routes, organizing tasks. But this wasn't a boardroom. This was survival. When she insisted on rationing water without finding a source first, I pushed back. Hard. "This isn't about authority," I said, my voice shaking but firm. "This is about staying alive." She stared at me for a long moment, then slowly nodded. That was the first crack in the wall between us. Days passed. I built shelter from driftwood and palm leaves. She tracked supplies with the precision of a strategist. We found a freshwater stream inland after hours of searching together. No arguments this time. At night, the island grew quiet. No emails, no meetings. That's when she started talking. About growing up feeling invisible. About success costing her every meaningful relationship she ever had. About how silence had become safer than honesty. I told her about my mother working double shifts, about giving up grad school to support my family, but how being reliable slowly replaced being ambitious. We weren't boss and assistant. Anymore, we were just two people stripped down to who we really were. A storm hit the island one night, without warning. Wind tore through our shelter. Rain soaked everything. Thunder shook the ground. Claire panicked. She tried to hide it, but fear doesn't. Respect pride. She clutched my shirt as the shelter bent under the wind. I wrapped my arms around her without thinking, anchoring us both. In that moment, she trusted me completely, and I realized something terrifying. I would do anything to keep her safe. After the storm, she grew quieter, more thoughtful. Her gaze lingered longer. Her voice softened when she said my name. Then she got sick. Fever from an infected cut she had brushed off days earlier. I stayed awake all night, cooling her skin. Whispering reassurance she barely heard, watching the strongest woman I'd ever known become fragile in my arms, change something permanently inside me. When she finally woke, her hand found mine. I don't scare easily, she whispered, but I was scared of losing you. Neither of us said the word love. We didn't need to. Weeks later, we spotted a distant plane. Rescue was possible, and suddenly, the island didn't feel like a prison anymore. It felt like a pause. Claire stood beside me watching the horizon. What happens when we go back? She asked quietly. The world we came from had rules, boundaries, judgment. I didn't have an answer, but I knew one thing. I don't want to pretend this didn't matter, said. I don't want to lose what we found here. She nodded slowly, emotion finally breaking through her composure. Neither do I. Rescue came 2 days later. The media loved the story, the headlines. The rumors Claire returned to her role flawlessly. Cold, professional, distant. At the office, she avoided eye contact. No calls. No explanations. I understood why. But understanding didn't stop it from hurting after a week. I resigned, packed my apartment, planned to disappear quietly. That's when there was a knock at my door. Claire stood there without makeup, without armor. I made a mistake, she said before I could speak. I chose safety over honesty. She stepped inside, her voice trembling. I've built my life on control. But the island showed me what life feels like without walls. I can't go back to pretending I don't need you. I didn't hesitate. I pulled her into my arms. This time, there was no storm, no island, no excuse, just choice. We didn't rush. We faced the consequences, the whispers, opinions. But for the first time, neither of us was living for approval. We were living for truth, because sometimes you have to lose everything familiar to find what actually matters. And sometimes, the person you least expect becomes the one you can't imagine surviving without.